For those of you who don't know, Jamie, I'm going to butcher your last name, Stacia?
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, is our secretary, and she's remote today. This meeting is being recorded, and we call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. So, all right, I opened up the floor for public comment.
I'm going to read this just because I want to make sure I get all my thoughts down. I wanted to go back to the conversation that the BOS had last meeting about the request for a proclamation for Vista Life Innovation. I was struck by the lack of questions or clarification about the work that Vista does by the Board of Selectmen. Nancy did explain some, but I would have expected, before making a decision, there would have been more questions. My takeaway from the discussion was a lack of interest in taking the time to understand what Vista is and what Vista does. It was stunning to me that Mrs. Young compared this ask, the ask by Vista, to HK students winning a wrestling championship. This completely exposed that you really have no idea what Vista does. First, they're not children, they are adults. They are not children who just want to nothing to do with that. It's just the kind of trail. And apparently, Mrs. Young was given an email back on June 7th. And this email was addressed to her town email address, which, well, it should have been, which she, at first, answered using her town email. But a couple things that I found interesting about that was that Miss Young took it upon herself in answering this email to say, now this was well before you guys discussed it as a Board of Selectmen, because obviously that was just at the last meeting, that she took it upon herself to answer this email saying, her exact words, was that she was going to reach out to the Park and Rec and to Christine Goupil to make this a priority. Now, Mrs. Young does not have that authority to speak on a town matter before it's even discussed, what you're going to decide on, what you're going to do, who knows. But what also I found striking is right after that email, Mrs. Young forwarded all of this information that was on her town email to her personal email. And then she started responding with this person using her own personal email. And the reason I bring this up is not so much, again, it's not about the context of the pickleball course going back and forth. It's really the complete disrespect for the process. And this was well before our first selectman knew what was going on. Yourself too, Lou, I assume that you, because you were not CC'd on this. What I did find interesting also is that when she continued to correspond, she CC'd Andy Sterna and Christine Goupil. Again, on a town matter that is nowhere at this point in time. So I found, again, that level of disrespect to Nancy, our first selectman, but really disrespectful to the entire process. So I thought that was really important. Also, the whole point of this whole thing was that you guys decided last week that Park and Rec, you had your motion that Park and Rec was instructed to look at this, figure out where it's going to fall, if it's going to fall, where it's going to fall in the scope of the work. I think it's a great idea. But in the response, and again, Mrs. Young took it upon herself to act on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and respond. And what I find really confusing that in her response, she directly said that it was voted to move on with siting and planning for construction. And also the words, "We will fund dedicated courts." That did not happen. So again, now she is a member of the Board of Selectmen. She's corresponding with residents of this community. This did not happen. You're a long way from this. I hope that this does happen. But we all know the process. And until, quite honestly, Park and Rec weighs in, you hear their recommendations, and I'm sure there'll be a matter of back and forth. And then the whole other process that has to follow. So, number one, I think these residents who are part of this thread, still curious as to why it's on her personal email, but it is, need an explanation that this isn't what happened. There's no decision on funding these dedicated courts. Again, hope it happens, but that's not how this works. But really more important, that this isn't the first time of some overstepping. And really, I think it's sad. And I hope that there's a way that the messaging to our community is that you work together and that not one person is overstepping the process. And I think that's really my intent here. Well, I think it's twofold. I think that this issue needs to be clarified with the people that she's corresponding to, that you have not decided, nor has the town decided, that funds will be dedicated to full courts. Didn't happen. But more importantly, that somebody from the Board of Selectmen is not acting on behalf of the Board of Selectmen and corresponding with people, Christine Goupil or a resident, on action that you have not even taken. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to comment? Okay, hearing none. Approval of minutes. Do you want to table?
Since I haven't gotten a chance to read them, and the reason is they weren't distributed, at least I didn't get a copy of them, so I'd like to wait until the next meeting to approve those minutes.
Okay, so Jamie, for the record, we're going to table the approval of Monday, August 8th, regular meeting minutes.
Got it.
All right, moving forward, I move to approve the minutes of the Thursday, August 18th, 2022 special meeting of the Board of Selectmen.
I will second that motion.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving forward, refunds and abatements. I move to approve the following refunds and abatements, all for overpayment. We have, and Jamie, I'll make sure you have this information. It's Teresa Pasqualini, Sun Beechwood LLC, Nissan Infinity, Jason Hackley, Michelle M. Allen, and Thomas Woodward twice. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. We don't have any appointments for this evening. I'm going to move on to department reports. Highway, Walt.
Yes,
Hello.
hi. Actually, a couple things. Well, first of all our paving projects for this year have been completed. So that's one thing out of the way. Of course, the chip sealing is already done. So,
Well, Chestnut Hill and the library.
well, that's still to see where the pricing comes out. There was some good news that the escalation on the asphalt did come down $1 or $2 a ton, so that'll help out. And we were 150 ton under what was quoted, so we'll save some money there. So we'll see what everything comes to, and then reevaluate Chestnut Hill as far as where we go from there, whether we try to get it done in this fiscal year.
Now, Walt, you had some questions about the library, and I don't know, Lou, if you're aware of those. I think at this point, the plan is they're going to do their lighting project. It should not impact. If we wait till spring to do paving there should be no impact.
Why would we want to wait till spring?
Well, right now, I'm not sure we're ready to go.
Well, first of all, when they came in, they moved in, we were still up in the air with as far as the milling go before we brought, and then you said there was no impact for the lighting.
My understanding is that they've got dedicated raceways so that there's no interference with the two projects.
Anyhow, so what I have to get a hold of, I think it's Dick. Is it Dick
Otto.
Otto?
Yeah.
He's chair. I'm going to talk to him and see where, just to, verify everything else, because the parking lot is going to be closed while we mill, and I'm going to try to coordinate when the best time for them to basically tie up the parking lot. So it's not a done deal as far as not getting it done this fall. They did have a big job in Clinton and also Middletown, so we just lucked out. We got it before the rain. I guess Adams got a big mess up there. They had a bunch of roads that are ground up, and there's dirt all over the place, but that's another story. Anyhow, so I will proceed on that and find out when we can get that done. I just want to make sure that we don't do it and then they have something else going on, but I'll check with that.
So North Chestnut Hill, the only thing that North Chestnut and the library, we need to see, or Chestnut Hill. We need to make sure, we gotta find out what the bill comes in for Tilcon for what we did, to see what the gap is for what needs to be done. Cause we do recognize that we thought we were gonna be short.
Yeah. So what we did was, when we discussed it before, that we ended up pulling Chestnut Hill for the sectional pave off to have a buffer to see what the other roads came in. We proceeded, we milled and paved Victoria, Bunker Hill. We overlaid sections of Roast Meat, Ironworks, River Road. So those are all set. Those are planned to be chip sealed next year, so we'll be in good shape for those.
Those were all overlays this year?
Sectional overlays, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't have a good memory, and I don't have the benefit of our capital plan. But I heard you say all of our road projects are done.
Are done, right? Except for this current year, except Chestnut Hill.
Through June of next year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's all done. The chip sealing is all done. So we're good on capital projects as far as the road goes.
And just another point of clarification: we did work on Chestnut Hill, but we didn't do all of the work. That's a question. Waiting on cost?
No.
The Chestnut Hill had sectional overlays,
Yeah.
which came to in excess of 100,000.
Okay.
All right. What we did is, because what was happening is all the other roads, Reservoir, Ironworks, were at least double, if not 2.5 times what the quote, because of the escalation.
Okay.
So what that I got out of the meeting, and I thought we were all in agreement, is that we would take one of the roads, which we picked Chestnut Hill,
You're right.
out of the sequence to wait till we find out where
we stand.
I got
where
you.
we stand with the doubt. So if we're good, then we'll proceed, or find the funding, we'll proceed in the spring.
Or we could potentially go back to Board of Finance and say we
Correct.
need to finish this road.
But
They're aware of
but
this.
see, the problem was we
okay.
didn't have a finite number.
Yeah.
So
I got
mean,
it.
to ask for money where we don't.
Yeah.
And this
Just
was
wanted
a
to make sure I understood the whole
right.
the whole picture.
And this is a constantly changing number because, well, oil prices and everything else, they change. I'm just hoping when we did pave that we were on the low week and not the high week.
Right now, we're waiting for what the invoices come in for what we did.
Yep.
See what the gap is. If there's a gap that's excessive, then we go back to Board of Finance.
Right.
Board of Finance has already been nudged.
Okay.
They're aware.
So they got the heads off anyways.
Yeah.
So
All right.
it's a thing. So that's the plan. If we can make it happen this fiscal year, we will. And I don't know whether it'll be this fall or early next spring.
Okay.
You want to? So here, you want to talk about Green Hill Culvert
Yeah.
repair? You want to take a look at that, Lou? 'Cause I've already looked at that.
I met with Howard, the engineer, on the inlet side of the head walls on Green Hill, and we took a look at it. There was I had him draw a probable cost on it. We're looking at basically removing the stones in the river or the stream bed, and using flowable or grout riprap, and actually encase it in cement so to stop any further erosion. On the there's two sets of culvert. There's a double culvert, which is the larger one, which you have pictures of both on there, and then there's a smaller one. Probably the best thing to do is if I can go up here. I'll show
Point
you.
it out.
Point it out. Right now, what happened is with the rain, all these rocks came down and partially blocked the culvert. So what the plan is to move these rocks back up along the stream bank and encapsulate it with riprap grout. So basically there's.
So they're not going to fall again.
Right, exactly. The other one is the smaller one. which, that's another picture of the same one, right here. What we're gonna do is, we're gonna actually remove this rock. Actually, part of it's gonna stay. It's this piece here, which necks down the,
Where is this one?
where's this one? Just before the other one. They're probably within, I don't know, maybe 50 feet of each other.
I'm confused. Is this the Green Hill Road where the road?
Where we did the discharge side.
Okay,
And where the washout, the patch we put on,
okay.
that's.
And that's all on the discharge side?
This is on the inlet side.
No, where we put the concrete
Right,
blocks?
yeah, that's on the discharge side.
Okay. I thought we did both sides.
Now,
No.
is this FEMA eligible?
Right, well, that was my next thing. Meeting FEMA Wednesday morning for mitigation. And there's a good chance that a good deal of this will be paid by FEMA. We're on a 90-10 cost share. And
90,
Well,
meaning
when
10
we-
being us.
When we looked at this, and maybe some others once before, I raised the question about what those culverts are designed for.
mhm,
And at the time, I was expecting a very specific answer, like a 50-year event, a 100-year event,
Right,
based
right.
on the watershed that feeds
Right.
into that infrastructure. And the answer I got was something, and it didn't come from you, it came from the town engineer,
Mhm.
that, well, basically, we went down there and repaired what's there.
right,
And I sort of come back to the same question. I understand what we're doing, I understand why we're doing it, but
Right.
if that culvert is not sized for, a
Right.
reasonable event,
yep,
50-year,
right,
25 maybe,
yep.
it's destined to fail again.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering whether our town engineer has ever done that.
Well, the biggest thing you would have to do hydraulic
Yeah,
thing on their end. I can't answer that question, Lou. I don't
No,
know.
I just think
understand
it's
where
worth
you're
going.
asking
Right,
the question.
yeah.
And
This is the second time this culvert's being
I know.
repaired.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, before it was on the discharge side. The inlet side didn't get affected, but we ended up doing that. The question comes into play when this was damaged on the discharge side. We were up against winter time, and to try to get, of course, Green Hill is our I-95,
right.
Killingworth.
No kidding.
All the more
And-
reason why we
and-
should have an answer to that.
Right, and the problem that you're gonna have is that you're gonna have to put detours, and that'll be going through residential neighborhoods and everything else, which isn't the ideal situation, but anyhow.
Let's go back to Howard and ask
Yeah.
him to find out what we're looking at to permanently fix, I shouldn't say permanently, 100-year proof it.
Well, 100-year might be, in these days, it's a reasonable
It's not
estimate,
100 years.
but generally that's pretty conservative.
Yeah,
25 to
right.
50 years is
Right.
is
The,
reasonable.
All right, we'll do some more due diligence, but in the meantime, I got a meeting with, this would be a temporary fix then, until we can figure out what we're gonna do, because we're.
And if that's the case, I just want to go into that
Right.
with that knowledge that it's a temporary fix, so
Right,
that,
and that we can move forward with a more permanent
Right.
solution.
Right.
You're right, a 50-year
Well,
solution.
Lou, also is, over the years, of course, development has come in, which increased our water flow, on our culverts and everything else. So, this is really the first time that we've had an issue with that particular culvert, from before.
But that's because of development.
we
There's
have.
more hardscape.
Well, we have Beaver Dam, we have Colonial, which was built, Buell Hill, and the whole nine yards up there, which increases. And there's some big culverts that are under Coughlin that feed in the tributary underneath that.
But keeping Green Hill healthy.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely is a priority.
Right. It
Right.
is our I know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, it is. And, but you're talking, would be upgrading the culvert size, so the road would be closed for, significant amount of time, but it is what it is.
Maybe not. Maybe we
Yeah.
decide not to do it. I just want to
Right,
make
no,
sure that we
yeah, at least you
understand.
have the options on the table. So anyhow, but I'm meeting with, like I said, FEMA Wednesday morning to discuss what our plan of attack was, and we'll go from there. This will stabilize the embankment, so we won't have that issue again. Not to say that the road won't overflow in really super heavy rain, but with the inlet armored and also the discharge armored, we will stand a better chance of being, okay
Okay.
without losing a road.
All right.
So,
well, let's move on to the mower repairs. You wanna bring up to speed what happened?
Our mower that we purchased back in 2017 when we purchased the other roadside mower, the flail mower, 3-point hitch attachment. We've been using it right along, been working good. Mark was up on Emmanuel Church mowing, and what happened is this car comes cranking around the corner. So instead of hitting the car, he cranked the tractor over to get out of the way. And what happened is he hooked the mower onto a tree, and what happened was it took and it racked the mower. We tried to straighten it, and so we thought we had it pretty good, but when we put it back in service, what happened is there's 2 sets of bearings, and if that's not parallel, what happened just blew the bearings out within a short period of time. We did call that the parts to put a head on, which is, there's a head with the flail, then there's the rest of the attachment that hooks the tractor. The flail is $14,000 in parts. We would have to assemble it. That would be ordered. It would take months to get that because nobody's got it. They do a complete, the head is $14,000. The whole unit is $18,000. It's $4,000 more. They do have a whole unit. When we were discussing with Nancy and stuff, the possibility of turning it into our insurance, whether that would be a viable option, whether our insurance would cover something like that, or we would have to appropriate the money to do that.
So I did push it to Gina to look into insurance.
Right. I'm preparing a narrative for the insurance company of what exactly happened, and so we're going to proceed with that, see where that comes out. And luckily, it's we still have the over the guardrail on the payloader.
This is the elder and smaller of the 2
correct
units.
Right. The one we just purchased here for the payloader, that's been working great. We've been using it, right along, and a couple little bugs, but we've gotten that ironed out. It's been a real good mower. Lasts a long time. This is a smaller, actually lighter duty type, basically as far as addressing grassy areas and smaller, brush and stuff, and not with the big ones. So anyhow, but the only good part about it, not the good, but we're at the end of the season, and we've been taking everything that we had left, and we're using the bigger unit. So that's where we stand on that. I just wanted to bring you up to date on where we're at. That we're going to try the insurance. If that doesn't work, then I'll come back and see if we can figure out what the best plan of attack is.
And you're putting together some kind of an incident report?
Right. What I did is I talked to Gina, and because she's in constant contact with Karma. And I said that I would put together a narrative of exactly what happened. Unfortunately, everything's happened so fast, he wasn't able to get a license plate number or anything else, but we didn't want to hit the car. So it, unfortunately, our piece of equipment took the hit. But anyhow, so that's that.
Okay.
I think that's it.
That's it. Thanks, Walt.
Thank you.
On the building department, I did submit the acting building official appointment letter. It's not included in the packet here. What I will do is send you and Jamie, we have all of the appointment letters. We have the appointment letter for Richard. I will send you the job description that we put together. We are interviewing a credentialed building inspector tomorrow afternoon. to see if he could fulfill the lion's share of this. I did speak with Robin today. Our permitting is starting to go down. We're trying to do catch up. Richard is doing some oversight to make sure we're closing out our open building permits, but just know that we're putting some effort to try to put a focus in on what's happening in the building department and stand them up correctly to be successful.
Okay.
On the budget report, Gina? Gina, are you available? Oh. Oh, yes, it's up to budget report. So you provided us with the 21-22 capital
Right.
and
Proposed, closeouts, the
Closeouts.
two over expenditures, and then the over expenditures, in the operating as well. There are two in the operating. The operating, there's no surprises, we've been talking about it for a while, the snow budget and town council.
so Lou, I'll leave it up to you. We have one more meeting just before the Board of Finance meeting, cause I looked.
You did?
I did look, but, I would entertain some motions to send this to the Board of Finance.
It's basically an administrative thing at this
Correct.
point.
It's just,
Yeah.
it's just housekeeping, we
If
do
you
it
wanna
every
make
year.
the motion, I'll
Okay.
move it.
I move to send a closeout of the following capital accounts as of June 30th, 2022 to BOF. Reevaluation, $1,386. KVFC turnout gear replacement, $3. KVFC bay doors and opener station 1, $6,240. KVFC station 1 roof replacements, $58,065. Paving projects, $93,360. Chip sealing projects, $88,050. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Those were all overages?
These were, no, these were closeouts.
Closeouts, okay,
Closeout.
so that's
Those are under expended.
under expenditures. Okay, yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, I move to send the over expenditure of the following capital accounts as of June 30th, 2022 to the Board of Finance. IT upgrades for $204 and sick vacation payout at retirement, $1,092.
Second.
All right, further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I move to send over expenditures in fiscal year 2021-22 in excess of $20,000 for the following line items. Town council, $35,777. Snow removal, $26,177.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to new business. Ordinance update on septic. In reviewing ordinances in Clinton and Westbrook and looking at what they've done in terms of, we're trying to manage Beechwood, some of these smaller septic tanks that don't have more frequent pump outs. So my suggestion is to update our ordinance 445-20 to include a clause that would help here in more frequent septic pump outs. And the way I look at it is the Director of Health, in the exercise of his or her discretion, may require more frequent pump outs for those on-site sewage disposal systems which he or she believes warrants more frequent maintenance. And the reason I'd rather go this route versus the 5-year and the 3-year is that it reduces the burden overall. Sun doesn't have to automatically do a 3-year pump out, which would potentially cause an increase in your leases. This way, they can look at those locations within Beechwood, particularly the downhill locations such as Swan Lake, and make individual determinations. not only just for Beechwood, it could be for any home here in Killingworth. So I'm working with Dave on looking at that. Any thoughts, Phil?
Well, I'd like some clarification on a couple of things. At some point, Jensen's, before it was Beechwood, was pumping all I had heard on a 3-year frequency.
Correct.
And that changed somewhere along the lines. The other is, and this was a piece of information that came out at the last meeting that I believe was incorrect, but that the cost of that is borne by the landlord.
It's not. It's borne by son.
That's what I mean, the landlord.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, and initially I was told it was borne by the homeowners. And so I certainly recognize the sensitivity of, potentially rolling into the lease and therefore being careful about that, but I'd like to know, how did we go from 3 to 5? Was that decision made by the Water Pollution Control Authority?
It's a good question. I said, well, I think the Water Pollution Control Authority was dissolved by that time based on the information that I sent you.
It probably was, but what I'm trying to figure out is, did Jensen on their own rotate through these things on a 3-year frequency?
That's what I suspect.
And then did Beechwood simply on their own say, we're not going to do 3, we're going to do 5? And it seems to me that that's an important piece of information for us to have.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether we have records of that. In the day when we had a Water Pollution Control Authority, we used to maintain records of all the pump outs, and we used to issue, and I believe we still do, issue notices,
letters, yes.
yeah, when they need to be done. So,
Let me do some homework on this, but I do think no matter where we go, we need to figure out a way for those individuals. But let's go.
Where I'm coming from, though, is something compelled Jensen to do it at 3-year intervals. And if it was part of a decision of approval or some sort of agreement with, that development and its non-conforming use, that still sits out there, and Beechwood, I wouldn't think, would have the unilateral authority to just change that. And so I would like to get that. And nevertheless, I do want to see those increased frequencies done to those septic systems.
Well, actually, Dave Tighe called me today specifically about this, so he's thinking this through. He has some questions as well.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy Ecke, who is the
Regional vice
she's
president.
the regional vice president for some communities, wants to speak with me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's an opportunity for me to ask some questions of her as well and get to the bottom of this. But this is something that I do believe we need to work on based on some of the issues that we've seen. Richard, you've told me as well that in Clinton, that's how they've gone with their ordinance for more frequent pump outs for their mobile home parks.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see where this plays out. Let me do some homework. It's on me.
I would recommend, in principle, I don't have a concern. I would recommend, if the Board of Selectmen is now the acting Water
WPCA?
Pollution Authority, then I would recommend that language that you read doesn't unilaterally allow is it the Director of Health?
Director of Health, yeah.
But that position should make that recommendation to the Water Pollution Control Authority, which is the Board of Selectmen, so that there's clear direction.
I see where
accountability.
you're going. I'm fine with that. Although, in speaking with the Charter Revision, they're thinking of absolving that from Charter, so we have to sort that out too. In this case, though, we need to think through, does Water Pollution Control Authority, because most of ours are septic,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Our entire town is dependent on subsurface sewage systems, and I'm very uncomfortable that we're becoming very laissez-faire in terms of managing those systems. So I just hearing that for the first time, I think that I would be very careful about loosening up that requirement.
All right, I'm going to circle that, and as you can see, I put 2 exclamation points.
Okay.
All right, old business, moving on. Fair rent commission ordinance approval. I got this fair rent draft ordinance from Dave Ties. I move to enact the fair rent commission ordinance and move it to town meeting for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Let me just take a quick read here, Nancy.
I will say a couple of things that, we looked at what Clinton did, we looked at what Westwood did, and Dave was comfortable with everything that was here.
Aye.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. This is just an update. The KVFC KAA pension plan. The trustees reviewed the updates provided by the pension attorney and suggested a few edits. Those edits are underway, and we should have a final plan approved by the trustees and ready for review by the Board of Selectmen in September. It's been a long road, but we've done the right thing.
Yeah, and we will get there.
We will get there.
It's done. We just need to dot the i's and cross the t's.
And make sure it's legally sound.
Right.
All right, Selectmen's comments, anything, Liz?
No.
My comments, I did meet with Tyree Huey, the newly hired Executive Director of HK Youth and Family Services. He is planning new programming for the school year, including, which I was excited about, a manufacturing certificate program in partnership with Pratt & Whitney. So he's trying to encourage children to go into, our youth to go into the manufacturing program and have jobs at Pratt & Whitney. They do have second round interviews for a prevention coordinator and clinical director. And I will invite him in October to come and speak with us about where he's at. So he's making headway. We had a youth and family services division that was imploding, and hopefully they're getting back up on their feet. In terms of deed restriction, in response to Jamie's inquiry at our last meeting, the assessor and I provided the requested update to the state. We only have 2 properties left that are deed restricted. There's 2 properties left on Patrick. There's no new deed restricted properties. And as far as we're concerned, that piece has been closed. Any question?
I was part of those approvals way back when. I just didn't remember them having an expiration date.
I know, it's just like milk, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know, not quite.
A little longer.
Yeah, it seems to me that one actually gets better. It doesn't sour.
It's like hay rations,
Yeah.
Very long out. All right, having no further business, I motion to adjourn.
Second.
Jamie, we are adjourned at 7:41.
Thank you, Nancy. Good night, everyone.
Good night.